I've been making games for at least 3 to 5 years at this point, and I've learned so much in that time period. Whether it's my pixel art skills, music, programming, or just general game design, it's gotten a lot better. But I think it's time to take a trip down memory lane and look at some of my oldest games and see how they stack up against my current standards. Spoiler warnings, they don't. Whenever I think of my old games, Jack's Hungry Adventure is always the first one to come to mind. It's one of my oldest games, with the most recent build coming from June 2022. It was heavily inspired by Cuphead, which I was very into at the time. I also cheated most of Cuphead because I was just terrible at it. I had a whole story planned out for Jack's Hungry Adventure, and from what I remember, it was pretty much just a cat who was hungry and his owner was out getting coffee or something. So the cat went out of the house to find the owner, and then the cat went to the coffee shop that the owner was at, and there's a robber or something, and then the cat beats up the robber. Happens to me every day, you know. Unfortunately for the story, I am not good at finishing projects, especially super long ones like that, so I stopped working on this after only the 3rd boss. Going into the actual game, I'm gonna be so honest. It's really bad. It's so terrible. I think you know it's going to be a rough ride when my main menu UI doesn't even scale to your screen and is just super small. Also, this was when my music was just really bad. I mean, just take a listen. I mean, you gotta start somewhere. The settings menu has some cutting edge UI, so you can adjust the volume, full screen, whatever option A is, and the controls, which is actually just the audio settings again. I also didn't do the volume slider right, so you can make the volume go to plus 20 decibels, which is, you know, very loud. Loading into a new game, we get a track that isn't terrible. I mean, it's definitely not good. It's very repetitive, but it doesn't hurt my ears to listen to. I also have some peak animations where I didn't realize that having the tail animations would always make the player look up when idle because my programming knowledge was still very minimal. Then we have varying pixel sizes, which is everyone's favorite. After approaching the giant vacuum, yes, that's a vacuum, you enter the first fight. It starts out with the giant vacuum charging at you, and you better learn these controls quickly because oh my god, the default controls are awful and there's no way to change them. I'm pretty sure they were based off my own Cuphead key bindings at the time, and you also have all the same movement options as Cuphead, although there isn't a lock in place state, which honestly would have been the most useful for reasons we'll see in a bit. Also, for some reason, I was absolutely evil, and taking one hit will kill you, aka everything one-shots you, and if you don't play absolutely perfectly, you'll have to start from the very beginning. I also had a lot of completely unreadable and bugged attacks, which makes that very fun. The vacuum has a lot of really interesting attacks, such as moving around the screen, and you have to jump over it. Then in phase 2, it moves around the screen, but this time, it's a little bit faster. Once you deal enough damage with the endless stream of hairballs you can shoot, it teleports to the top. Hopefully you haven't jumped there because that's a restart, and then shoots heat-seeking dust bunnies at you, which you have to shoot or they'll kill you, because we all know the great rivalry between cats and dust bunnies. After beating the boss, you're sent to the start on a map because I didn't know how to set the player up from where they last were, so you always just teleport to the beginning of the map. But good news guys, the vacuum is gone now. Going through the store where you can tell I forgot to turn off color compression, thanks Unity for having that as a default, you go into this kitchen area where you actually can't go back behind this counter because of a lovely invisible wall, meaning you're forced to approach this cucumber on the floor and it activates a fight. Oh my goodness, who could have expected that? Something you'll notice very quickly is that the background for the fight is actually kind of good looking. Having a pure plain white background wasn't the best idea, but the window is nice. I'm pretty sure it's just based off of another picture I looked up, but hey, at least it's not terrible looking. In this fight, you'll start off fighting a bunch of vegetables. You can either get a carrot, a radish, an orange, a watermelon, an apple, or a piece of lettuce. The carrot goes really far off screen and then slowly comes back and follows you. The radish tries to follow you, but is stuck in the middle. The apple follows you, but it's stuck on the ground, and the piece of lettuce actually just follows you. The orange stays in the middle and expands. I don't really know what that is supposed to mean, but alright. And then the watermelon spits seeds at you, but you can easily just throw the seeds back into the watermelon by jumping right next to it. Once you beat a certain amount of vegetables, a cucumber snake appears and just moves across the screen. After an unfortunate amount of time of the snake just moving around the screen and doing literally nothing else, it teleports and has an actual animation. Nice. Then it throws heat-seeking cucumbers at you, and just a friendly reminder that they kill you in one shot. You also have to jump in order to hit them, so you're only really going to be hitting the snake with like 10% of the shots you fire. Luckily, I was nice enough to add this special attack, which is indicated by this gray bar here. Once you hit a threshold, you can use this big hairball that deals damage to whatever it touches, and even after it's not touching, it will still do damage. Once you kill the snake, it starts tweaking out, and it's time to go back to the beginning of the map. After a nice walk, you go into this very detailed room room with the shelf of toys, yes those are toys, with another very weird looking shelf blocking the door. I wonder what this could be. Once you touch it, you go into the boss, which isn't the worst visually, except for the background is actually really terrible looking, so it kind of evens out. The song is a pretty mixed bag. I think the drums sound good, but everything else is pretty not good. Fire truck, which was chased off a Lego fire truck, I'm not even kidding, just goes back and forth, and then there's this city background, which I think is a cool idea to be fighting on the road, but nothing is really done with it. Also, the effect isn't really well made because you can see it clip at certain points. I think if the cat was like on a skateboard or something like that, that would be really cool. It's kind of goofy, but that's really the tone of the game. I think it's kind of obvious that I was pretty lazy with this, and I was really only adding what I had to do instead of what I think would have made the game better, which is something that thankfully I've started to not do. Speaking of the cat, it's actually based on a real cat I once had named Jack. He was a gray Maine Coon and is very clearly the inspiration for the cat once you see them side to side. The sprite itself is, pretty bad since the hind legs don't even look like hind legs, and the animations are not that good since I didn't really know the timing of them. It's also weirdly high resolution, especially compared to the other things, when I feel like it really didn't need to be, seeing as how good my cats and fighting cats look while also being like 12 pixels. Going back to the fight, you beat the fire truck and then a Lego City helicopter appears. Yes, it's all based off Lego City. It comes around and actually has a few attacks it can do. All of these attacks have absolutely no indicator of what or when they will be. The attacks all consist of the helicopter flying across the area in some different shape and of course killing you in one shot. I'm pretty sure the patterns are a V, a U, and a W. Something that really doesn't help this fight is that the jumps are super floaty, and once you jump it takes a while to get down, so you can just easily get stuck in the wall and die. Luckily, there's something you can do that will make it so you don't have to fight the helicopter, since you can hop on top of the fire truck, which was intentional, and then you can hop onto the side barrier, which wasn't intentional at first, but I guess I just said alright. Then you can shoot the helicopter off screen. It's also good to note that if you overshoot the barrier, you're gonna fall into the void forever, and since there's no restart button, you have to fully close and reopen the game. I came up with a strat to beat this boss where I try to save up as many special attacks as possible, which just go up as time goes on. Luckily, the fire truck is just 1 minute and 1 second, yes I timed it, of literally standing in one spot and holding a button. I beat the helicopter 3 times but also died in the middle, and I didn't see another boss come, so I just kind of gave up. I don't think I really showed it, but the bosses are just so long and tedious, with most of the attacks literally just being walking and killing you in one hit. And that's Jack's Hungry Adventure. Although I've been talking about how bad this game is, I think it's a really important one in my game development journey. This is the first game I made where I actually had like an idea and a story and tried to build a concept. And even though it's a really bad game, like it's really bad, alright? Like, I'm not gonna deny it. I definitely did put a lot of effort into this though, and I really did try and do something, even if it was a copy of just a far superior game. Unfortunately, I just didn't know what I was doing at the time, so it just turned out really bad. Alright, I'm going to be talking about my next game shortly, but my cat just wanted to remind you guys that if you are enjoying them, please subscribe and join the Discord and all that fun stuff. Alright, sorry for the interruption, let's get back to the games. Another one of my old games is a Pokemon ripoff I made called Foosters. So instead of the magical animals that we call Pokemon, you were fighting with food. You know this game is better because the menu UI is actually sailed to the screen, although the menu is actually really hideous, so kind of evens out. The song is also just not good at all. For some reason, you can play as a girl or a boy, even though it makes no difference. I think I was literally just trying to copy Pokemon word for word. Nintendo, please don't sue me. I think it's also good to note that this entire thing was made off of a YouTube tutorial series on how to make a game like Pokemon. You start out in an area with no music or sound effects and some really poorly made trees. And then there's also this person with nothing to say, just hanging out. But you're clearly meant to go into this building. Once you're into this building, it actually just teleports you to another part of the overworld because I didn't know how to make sub areas. You go into this weird looking lab with a person who could be out of bounds because they're just on a random weird walk cycle, which slowly sends them further and further away, and at a certain point they're just literally impossible to reach. They give you the rundown on Foosters and the whole premise, and they tell you that they'll give you a Fooster, but since I didn't know how to do text well, it's actually on a set timer from when you start the dialogue. You can choose between 3 Foosters, those being Berg, which is a burger, Pos, which is pasta, and Rosema, which is a rosemary. I'm gonna say this right now, Rosema is easily the best one because for some reason they are pretty much immune to all normal type attacks, and most of the Foosters in my game do normal type attacks. You exit the building and go into this forest where you're challenged to a battle. Once in the battle, you get this absolutely terrible song, What Was I Thinking? If you try and throw a Foo Square, the Pokeball equivalent, at the opponent's Fooster, it gives some beautiful text that cuts into the choice buttons. You can also just run away. Then the overworld music kicks in, and it's not as bad, but it's still really bad. There's a bunch of white looking stuff which is actually meant to be plates, and it's the same function as the tall grass from Pokemon, and you just encounter all your wild Foosters here. I did make a whole party and capture system, and there's also a bug where if you try and catch a Fooster and fail, then all of your opponents will be permanently smaller because I was terrible at programming. What sets Foosters apart from Jack's Hungry Adventure is that Foosters is a much shorter game to go through. I'm already done talking about it in, 500 words instead of 1,700. I only had 3 Foosters in the game, being the Burger, Pasta, and Rosemary, which all had 3 evolutions. There's some cool attacks I made, but there's really nothing too crazy about this, just another Pokemon ripoff. Alright guys, now we're getting into peak territory. When I was in my Five Nights at Freddy's phase, I made a fan game called Don't Sleep. This is one of the few 3D games that I made, and I don't think it's like the worst looking considering that it's meant to be a horror game. Of course, I don't think it like looks good at all, but it could have been much worse. The main menu is really ugly, like this looks terrible, what was I doing? And there are a few options you can choose from. There's also a small flashing light with one of the characters being visible at the time. The notebook brings you to the notebook, which is blank. For now. Going into night 1, the place is very dark, but luckily you have a flashlight. Unfortunately, it has a very low battery. There's Boxy, who's definitely not meant to be Foxy, the monster under your bed, and a giant gray glob named Ghoulie. You can look out the window where there will be some monstrous figure named Carl that you'll have to quickly flash in order to make it disappear. Also, yes, these are all the names that are in the game files. Honestly, the ambience for this game goes kind of hard, and there is an unsettling environment since the only way to progress through the night is to sleep, which also means sitting in one place and not being able to do anything. Honestly, I think I was kind of cooking with this idea. The notebook also updates as you progress, and although it doesn't really work, it's still something that's kind of cool. Man, if only this game was better. Oh wait, I made a sequel, Don't Sleep 2. Don't Sleep 2 is just the far superior game in every way. I mean, just look at the main menu. Although the song is just the horror, 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 but backwards, it's kind of a million times better because you know you're in for some real good stuff. The premise this time is 10 times better. It's the middle of the night in the bathroom and you have to pee. You also have to pee like all night for some reason, and you can't let your bladder get too full or you'll lose. This was also inspired by my grandma's house. I think that's just a fun bit of lore. Right behind you in the shower is Boxy, who needs to be subdued by closing the shower curtain. To the right of the toilet is Carl, and to the left of the toilet, there's a closet you can enter, and if you go left again, there's another door that leads to Ghoulie. You can actually hear their footsteps, which I think is pretty cool. In order to beat the 2 at the door, you have to wait till they're right up to the door. If you close the door at any other time, then you will get jumped. They also can't come into the hallway if you're flashing the light. The game was definitely unfinished. I had a lot of sounds that I think are going to be used for another monster. They sound like this. Perhaps to avoid that monster, you would have to go into the closet and hide. I don't really know. But I definitely was cooking, and this is 10 out of 10 peak. Can't tell me otherwise. Well, that's all the games I have for now. This was mostly just me going over Jack's Hungry Adventure because I just had so much more to say on that game compared to the other 3. And I'm gonna say this now, none of the games are good. There are some that are better and there are some that are worse, but I don't think good is the right word to describe any of these, and honestly, that's okay. It's just part of my learning journey. I do think it's cool to go back on some of my old games and reflect, since I think that my more recent games are just a lot better, especially my music, guys. I don't think you guys know what I was going through. But I mean, what really is the point of all this? Well, it's all to really nail in some of the best advice I've ever heard. It sounds really simple at first, but it's kind of turned me to the person I am today. That advice is very simply, don't give up. I know it sounds kind of corny, but if I ever just like thought, oh man, my game is really bad, or oh man, my music is bad, and I gave up, I never would have been where I am today. I never would have made the songs that I do today that I think are really good. If I compared the games to their far superior versions that they were based off of and gave up, I never would have been making the games I make today that are based off my own thoughts instead of something else. Nobody starts out perfect at something, and these games are just how I learned a lot of important lessons. If you want to see me go through more of my old games, then let me know. This was really fun to do, and I have a bunch of other games that I would like to go back and play, even if they are much less finished. You can get my most recent game, Carnival Castle, for free on itch.io. I have a Discord you can join, all links in the description. Other than that, I don't really have anything to say, so have a nice day.